All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. My name is Ahmed Best, and I'm here with my partner, Dr. Lonny Brooks. And we are here to talk about Afrofuturism, the Afrofuturist podcast, and our game, Afro-Rithms Live, Afro-Rithms from the Future. This is a game that we've developed to help iterate, ideate, and democratize a possible future. And first, what we're going to do is we're going to give you a brief overview of what Afrofuturism is from none other than the most illustrious Afrofuturist expert, Dr. Lonny Brooks. Dr. Brooks, take it away.
All right. Thank you. It's great to be with you all. So let me just go right into it. I'm going to share my screen with you, and we're going to go into a keynote presentation about Afro-Rithms from the future. So here we go. All right. And let's play. Okay. So we call this the Afrofuturism journey. And you can see it on AfroRhythms.com. So the whole idea behind this is using Afro-Rithms from the future as a forecasting game, centering race and anti-racism in forecasting. And, you know, we have a whole team behind this. Ahmed and I, Fathomers, a research design foundation, Equitable Games Group, and Paula, the graphic design for our beta version, and Alan Clark, who helped to create our logo for the card deck. So we're going to go right into it. We're all pretty much co-designers on this, so let's go forward. I always like to give an acknowledgement that we're on Ohlone land, and just a nod, and if we're talking about anti-racism, to really respect our Indigenous brothers and sisters on the land that we occupy now. So going forward, you know, algorithms from the future really are talking about how we are situated in algorithms that surround us and all of our software that we're using these days, and in the social media platforms that we're on, and everything that we do, we are surrounded by algorithms. And, you know, this wonderful book by Sophia Noble called Algorithms of Repression, How Search Engines Reinforce Racism really bring to that point across that we need to re-center algorithms from an Afro-centered perspective that is not so easily misguided into stereotypes. So going forward, in centering it from an Afrocentric perspective or a Black diaspora perspective, there's a wonderful book you all should read called African Fractals, Modern Computing and Indigenous Design by Ron Eglash. And it just shows those wonderful, amazing algorithmic fractals that are inherent and embedded in African society and across the world. There's a great design illustration from Tree Scott Gaskins, who really looks at implementing algorithms in her designs and work. I just love this portrayal of an Afrocentric perspective from the uprisings that happened, you know, especially in Oakland. There's on Broadway with this woman owner of a horse ranch, and she just riding her horse down Broadway. It's just such a symbol of pride to me, symbolizing this Afrocentric perspective of pride and innovation. So Black futures matter too. And that's what we really want to get across through this game as well. And we want to define this term that was coined by the Reverend Andrew Rollins called Astro-Blackness. And Astro-Blackness is the rise of Astro-Blackness is a person's Black state of consciousness released from the confining and crippling slave or colonial mentality, who becomes aware of the multitude and varied possibilities and probabilities within the universe. It's our vibranium, so to speak. If you remember that special stone and substance from Wakanda, from the Black Panther, and in the fictional city of Wakanda, that vibranium is us. Black people have always been futurists. We had to be. You know, Afrofuturism in particular aims to reclaim and transform the trauma of past atrocities against the Black and Afro-queer diaspora. And so we as Black people, when we were taken from our homeland in West Africa and transported with the latest in bondage technologies to a alien new world in the Americas, we were forbidden to speak our language, to practice our music, And so under the imposition of Christianity, we had to, under the radar, create spirituals that imagined Zion, a place where we were free and completely free of slavery. And this is what scholars call sonic utopias. Our spirituals were sonic utopias speaking about a future Wakanda. So Afrofuturism is and combines science fiction and fantasy to re-examine how the future is currently imagined and to envision alternative futures based on the Black experience. It's a cultural worldview for interrogating Eurocentric motifs. And there was this wonderful exhibition done at the Schoenberg Center for Black Research at the New York Public Library in 2015 called Unveiling Visions, the Alchemy of the Black Imagination, where we saw this radical Black art. In particular, this one is by Menzel Bowman, that is. And it gave birth to a whole movement called the Black Speculative Arts Movement in 2015. And we see and look at radical Black art as a future's window, a way of tracing the Black fantastic. It's the minor key sensibilities generated from the experiences of the underground, a wonderful quote from Richard Aiton, where future types trace the circulating science fiction capital that are filled with promises of the future that can simultaneously constrain and unleash our imaginations. I coined this term called Afrofuture types that are Black signals of the future that find and reclaim the traces of Black cultural visions alongside erasures of those signals. One instance of this you could think of as Tulsa City, Oklahoma, where they had the Black Wall Street that was bombed to the ground in 1921 because of a trumped-up charge of racial assault over assault of by a supposedly a Black man against a white woman. It was totally false, but a mob of white people, white men, burned this Black Wall Street neighborhood to the ground. It was just a generation or two after slavery where this neighborhood, this thriving Black neighborhood in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that was called the Black Wall Street, had an amazing number of stores, businesses, and wealth in general. And it was bombed to the ground over this trumped up charge of perpetuated by white racism. And the remaining survivors were marched to a concentration camp. And in particular, we're only really hearing about Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the Black Wall Street in the last few years. It was erased as a beacon of what it once stood for. And so that's where we have to kind of trace and reclaim these signals of innovation and simultaneous erasure that happened. This is another great painting by Menzel Bowman, where we kind of have the past, present, and future of Black innovation and ancestral wisdom all at once. Another one here is When is Wakanda? Afrofuturism and Dark Speculative Futurity by Stacey Robinson. Another great poster art that captures and is the cover art for our Journal of Futures Studies special issue on When is Wakanda. This is a exhibition going on right now called Curating the End of the World, that also another one by Stacey Robinson, but this is actually on right now. You can go to it by Googling Curating the End of the World. It's a 2-part exhibition that's happening right now. You can go see it, and there's a whole series of exhibitions under Curating the End of the World that's happening for the rest of the year. So it's another way of tracing that Black fantastic. So we see Afro-Rhythms as democratizing the future. You can, email me if you want for more information, and we'll have more of our information up there for you to follow. But I want to we're going to have a beta version of our Afro-Rhythms game launching soon by next February. And so the whole idea is shifting the lens, democratizing, imagining anti-racist futures where Black futures matter. So let's preview our game, and I'm going to play a video of our game, a game event that we did when we were able to be free in Rome. This was down at the workspace called NeueHouse in Hollywood, and it's called World Building with the Afrofuturist podcast, where Ahmed Best, our illustrious host, facilitates this gameplay. So let's look at it now.
we all have agency over what the future can bring.
Oops.
Each of us individually can shape not only our personal future, but the
Hold on
future
for a
that
second.
we all live in.
You're
And
getting,
the object of tonight is to get
hold on
you
for a second.
to imagine. We want to get you to get out of the frame of reference of what you think your future might be and get as creative as possible. And we're going to see what we can build using that imagination and speculative thought. And we might come up with some cool stuff. So there are people who have tension cards. These tension cards are going to establish the parameters of our universe, and we're going to choose 2 cards. Let me see. Raise your hand if you have a tension card.
See what's happening.
All the way back there.
We're actually okay. We hear it just fine.
More or less black.
We're fine?
Yeah.
Who else has a tension card?
More or less social justice.
More or less social justice. So now that we have the parameters of our universe, we have created 4 multiverses that we can live in, all along the spectrum of those 2 choices. So now you guys in your chairs, you have inspiration cards. All right, let me see. What is your inspiration card?
Oh, I have fashion.
Okay, fashion. I like this one. I like fashion. What would be an article of fashion that would give you more Black feminist leadership and more social justice? Yes.
I was just thinking about the notion of the invisibility cloak, but also like to have it be reversed. Like it can make you invisible, but it could also make you more visible, amplifying like what you normally.
So an amplification cloak. Go. A bodysuit. What does this bodysuit do?
From any kind of harm.
How about a bodysuit that repels emotional damage? Oh shit. Okay, here we go, y'all. Let's go. Let's go. So we have a bodysuit that when anything emotional tries to come and get you, it repels it. How could it be dystopian?
Dictators could use it.
How so?
If they're not feeling emotional damage, then there's no consequence to society. So it feels like it could be a very negative thing to have a student.
Right. So that could be dystopian. Okay, I need another inspiration, another object.
Inspiration, queer liberation.
Queer liberation. Object. Who has an object? Object. Here. Buttons.
You can press the button to change your gender.
A gender shifting button. Who's with that?
Yeah.
The button should be more like you're more on the spectrum. It's more fluid.
Yeah.
I think we're like post-binary.
It's not binary.
So what if the button is just like, it just regulates you through your queer liberation? It's a dial. It's not a button, it's a dial, right?
Research has shown that we can create alternative memories that heal trauma. And how do we heal the trauma of 400 years of oppression? How do we heal any personal trauma that we've had individually, collectively? And how do we create alternative memories of the future that pull us in and create resiliency for everybody? So we see this game as potentially available in schools, colleges. I played it with my students.
I like playing it with students also because, especially your students of your Afrofuturism course, they want to be creating their own cards and their own ideas that they're putting into the game. So it's not just using what we've given them, but adding to it.
Let it become a democracy of the future for everyone, available to everyone.
All right, everybody. So that was the preview of the game and from last year. And now let's play the game. So I'm going to introduce our team with Ahmed and Eli Kosminsky, our other co-designer of the game, Ahmed Best and and Tanolo and Lacey. We're all going to play this game right now, here and now. So
thank you all so much again. Thank you, Dr. Brooks. You know, every time you do that Afrofuturism overview, I always hear something new. I always hear something different. I'm always inspired a little bit more. And then watching the video really made me miss people. And it's so interesting, like when you see people like in a room sitting next to each other, it's so difficult now being in this age, not thinking like, oh my God, they're not social distancing. And that was hopefully like sometime very, very soon we'll be able to get back to that. So just like Dr. Brooks said, we are going to do a round of Afro-Rithms from the future, and we're going to do a live gameplay, an example of a live gameplay to show you how the game is not just played for fun, not just played to talk about Afrofuturism, but really as a tool to help realize and ideate a democratized future, a future that is globally centric and a future that is equitable and all-inclusive. And a lot of times when we think about things like equity and inclusivity and Afrofuturism and being able to be global, we come up against a lot of barriers. And those barriers exist in the world in which we live in now. So Afro-Rithms, what we do is we take you out of this world. We move you off this plane of existence. We take you past dark matter and through to another idea of what reality is. We'll take you through the black hole, pass through the wormhole, and emerge up into a brand new universe. And the beautiful thing about Afro-Rithms is we get to create the parameters of that universe. Okay, so we're all going to show you how to play. Lacey and Chanello represent the Fathomers art group, whom we've been working with for a couple of years now. And for all of you, go to LinkedIn, because LinkedIn brings you some good people, and LinkedIn brought us the Fathomers, and we really appreciate LinkedIn for that. Shout out LinkedIn. And Eli Kosminsky, who represents a group called Equitable Games Group, who are packaging as well as co-designing with all of us Afro-Rithms from the future. Okay, so let's get started. Let's play the game.
Yeah.
Okay, Eli, bring up our first slide if you don't mind.
I think I need Josh's help to do that. Thank you.
There it is. Afro-Rithms from the future. Okay, so this is the entire game in a slide. This is our entire game board. On the left, underneath the Explore heading, you see the parameters of our universe. In there is where we get to decide what the universe is going to be. And we define that universe between most possible and least possible along an X and Y axis. The cards that you see on the right will not only give us the tensions for our universe, but it'll also be our inspirations for the artifacts and the objects that we will build once we choose a world in the universe to populate. Okay, so we start with the tensions. The tensions go from most possible to least possible. And then once we have the definitions of the universe, we put a world in the middle of the universe, and that dictates how we build our objects and our artifacts. Okay, so the couple of things that we say when we first play this game. Number one, there are no wrong answers. Okay, no wrong answers whatsoever. Number two, you get to use your imagination. You get to ideate. You get to be open. You get to be free, right? No wrong answers. You get to be open and you get to be free. And there are no losers. You either win or you learn. And the winning is the idea, right? All the ideas that we come up with, all the ideas that we put together, all the ideas that we share and come down with, that's the winning of the game. Okay, so the first thing has to be the first. We go to our tensions board. These tensions are the tensions that we select our universe to be. And these tensions are talked about and they are voted on. So I'm going to start with Chanello. We need to pick two tensions, X and Y. What are the two tensions you're looking at?
I'm looking at more or less police brutality and more or less equality.
Okay, so what made you come up with those two?
I think just the relevant news and just contemporary times right now. I think there does need to be a hard discussion about police brutality in this world that actually comes out with fruitful results and fruitful answers, and and more or less equality, because again, very much needed.
Right. And a lot of times when we play Afro-Rithms from the future, we talk about reimagining the definitions of things. So how can we reimagine policing? And I'll open that up to everybody. Let's open that up to everybody. How would you reimagine policing?
Well, I think really, imagining more restorative justice in policing, where you have first responders might not necessarily have to be police if it's dealing with someone who's, undergoing mental trauma.
Right.
You can have, psychologists, social workers on the scene at first, and that's one way of reimagining policing. And, so that's, that's what I'm thinking.
And the brutality is the abuse of that, the abuse of the social construct of it, right? The idea of it turning from protection into self-preservation, almost like a tribal organization rather than an organization to help the society at large. Lacey, what are the two that you are looking at?
Yeah, I was thinking about more or less ecotopia. And more or less equality also.
Ecotopia, what do you mean by ecotopia?
So I think it's being like in a meaningful symbiotic relationship with all of the creatures on the planet, not just humans and non-humans in alliance, and learning from each other and recognizing each other's intelligence. And I think that plays right into equality too. It's like a equitable ecotopia.
Now, in our world, and this is open for the group, is the ecotopia, is that exclusive to our world, or can we expand beyond it from, let's say extraterrestrial or quantum ideas? Like how far does our ecotopia reach?
Yeah, I mean, NASA and others organizations are establishing protocols to protect microorganisms that actually have been established already, like with microorganisms that might be discovered on Mars or other planets that we actually protect, and make sure that we don't contaminate them as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be interested in this idea of ecotopia when it comes to extraterrestrials, because value systems are always involved in the conversation when we talk about ecotopia, and our value systems might be completely different from a microorganism that lives on Titan, for example, or one of the things that astrophysicists always talk about is like how water is everywhere in the universe, and we think of it as something that's scarce on our planet, and actually there's water all over the place. And a lot of science fiction is just like, oh, they came to Earth looking for water. And scientists are like, what are you talking about? There's water everywhere. There's water everywhere in the universe. But within that water, there might be microorganisms that can survive in the, the freezing temperatures of space. Inside there's these frozen, floating extraterrestrial asteroids. Nice. Eli, what are you thinking? What are your two?
Well, I was also looking at equality. That one's always interesting to me. Also, in terms of the next phase, figuring out whether that's a utopic thing or a dystopic thing, how even because we're all, I realize that we put equality instead of equity. Certainly we can have a lot of equality and still have a lot of problems.
Right.
And then and more or less migration.
Migration, what do you mean by migration?
Well, that's a good question. If you're looking at extraterrestrials, that could be migration between planets. It could be migration between continents or just cultures.
Yeah, migration, a lot of times when we talk about migration, we also talk about, and this is something that's been coming up a lot for me personally, is the ownership of the place you migrate to. And we tend on this planet, in this reality, in this dimension, we tend to really focus on who owns what when it comes to where we settle. And a lot of indigenous cultures, the idea of ownership over land, it's a foreign concept. They don't really understand that. So migration has to have some specificities behind it. What does anybody else think in the group about migration?
Yeah, well, migration is being caused by climate change, right? So that's, something that we have to anticipate getting worse.
Right.
And, how do we address it? How do we create livable systems, that respect all people too at the same time?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Brooks, what are your two tensions?
Oh, okay. Mine are, I think, more or less equality and more or less Black. Because, yeah.
What do you mean by Black? Let's define Black. What is more or less Black?
Well, I'm just thinking of the Black diaspora, from and Africa too. The African Union includes the Black diaspora as a seventh part of a seventh stream of its union.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that we're included. That Black is, everything in terms of our ancestry to our culture. And, I just remember being at UCLA in the dorms and one of my roommates saying, oh, hip hop, that's a fad. I'm like, yeah. Until it's spread across all over the world, in every genre possible, you see hip hop. So yeah, that didn't go away.
Absolutely. What about Blackness for the rest of the group? What do we think is Black when we say more or less Black? It's such a wide open, such a diverse thing that when we talk about Black and Blackness. So I think Blackness is worth personal definition in this context, right? Because most of the time Blackness, when you first start thinking about it, there's a negativity that comes up with it, especially in the English language. And something that I was thinking about a lot recently as well is that, in Australia, there's the indigenous people in Australia celebrate this celestial body called the Great Emu. I don't know if you know about this, but the Great Emu is a section of space with no stars in it, right? And then you can see that from Australia, and it's shaped like an emu, but it's space. And astrophysicists have looked at the Great Emu, and it's actually a place in the cosmos that has no stars. It's this expanse that is some believe that it's this representation of dark matter. But because in Western philosophy and Western astrophysics, they're looking at what's there, and they don't look at the not there, right? Whereas in Aboriginal culture in Australia, they're looking at the not there, and the not there is something, right? The not there has a value, and it's a value worth celebrating and worshiping. Right. So this idea of Blackness being this nothingness is a very Western centralized idea, where once you get into Aboriginal cultures, the Blackness is potential. It's, a celestial being. It's godly. It's strength. It's wonder. Right. So I think Blackness, when we play this game, is a wonderful thing to explore and wonderful thing to expound upon. Right. Okay, so let's make our choices. More or less equality, that's going to be in there. Right? Yeah. That's going to be in there. So that's one of the parameters, okay? Because we all are in unison. And that very rarely happens when we play Afro-Rhythms from the future. However, our second tension, we are going to have to vote on, okay? So let us, and here's the thing. You can't vote for the one that you suggested. That's the little caveat. That's the little caveat. Can't vote for the one that you suggested. Okay. So who is looking at more or less police brutality? I'm gonna vote for that one too, because I'm interested in seeing what we can build. So that's 2 for police brutality. More or less migration. That's a big 0. More or less ecotopia. I like ecotopia. More or less Black.
I want to do that one. I want to do that.
2, 3. Lacey, what'd you say?
I think we go with 3. The other one was
that's
2.
it. More or less Black. Those are our tensions. More or less equality and more or less Black. Let's slap those up into our universe representational axis board. All right, so those are our intentions, more or less equality. And more or less Black.
Normally we would have extra people doing this behind the scenes, but I'm doing it all live today.
That's all right. You guys get to get a really welcome treat of looking backstage. It's always cool when you go backstage. It's like being at the Lion King and seeing that they're all puppets.
Wait, they are? Okay.
Yeah. You really felt gazelles were prancing across the stage. They're all South Africans playing with puppets. Okay, so this is our universe. All right, the next phase of the game. Inside our universal axes, you see these wonderful numbers 1 to 5. And that space is where we're going to place our world, right? And this is the great debate. A lot of times everybody goes, oh, okay, 5 to 5. Let's make a utopia. Just like our illustrious designer Eli Kosminsky said, when you have equality, right, that might not be the most possible equality, might not be the most possible equity. It's a good debate. So we have to actually think about this, right? We have to actually think about where we are placing our world. Okay, so Dr. Lonny Brooks, what is your suggestion on where we should place our universe?
Well, I tend to be a transformative type of person where I want to see things like change happen. So I'm gonna go for a 5.
5s and 5s.
Yeah, most possible equality, most Black.
Most possible equality, most possible Blackness. That's 5 for 5. Eli, where do you want to see our world?
Well, I can I ask a question about Lonny's envisionment of that? Okay, so just out of curiosity, in the most Black world, I mean, that means that there's no more white people, right? Like that's fine.
Oh,
maybe not.
Yeah,
no. I wasn't thinking
early
that way.
Yeah, it really depends on how we define Black, right? Because if we are defining Black as the recognition of creation, right? The recognition of reverence for the unknown or the deification of the unknown, then Blackness is emerging. Blackness is creativity, and it's not necessarily a race, right? We're in another universe. The race of Black people might not even exist, right? White people don't exist. We just have a Blackness. Dr. Lonny Brooks.
Yeah, I was also thinking, Blackness is on a spectrum. Like, I'm Black, I'm Jewish, I'm Native American. I got it all going. So like for me, my Blackness is expressed across my being. It's not just compartmentalized. So it's suffused throughout what I do and my world vision. So that's how I kind of see, what a full Black world, because Blackness is a nuance. And that's what the Black diaspora has been from the very beginning, a spectrum.
So it's between the nuance and the great emu. That could be Blackness. Anybody else? Chanela, you had a comment on Blackness. See, this is the good thing about Afro-Rithms. It gets you asking these questions, and we can really find some really interesting introspective definitions when we talk about this. Chanela.
Well, I think it is mirroring what you were saying before about how Blackness could be described or just used in any sort of way. So rather than confining just Black as into the individual, to it can be the Black history, it can be the Black culture, it can be just what Black kind of like the word Black means to a certain individual. So I think with having it more or less Black, more Black can mean multitude of different things. So I'm excited to see where that goes.
Yeah, I am as well. Lacey, how would you define Black?
Yeah, I'm thinking about like Blackness always being Blackness as unknown or unknowing, and as like a mysterious force that's kind of always at work, even if it isn't seen, right? Like that's what mystery is. Like I'm thinking of the womb, and I'm thinking about seeds, all kind of going through transformation through a period of darkness.
Yeah, and that kind of reminds me of when we did our science speed dating event with the National Academy of Science and Entertainment Exchange. Dr. Clifford Johnson, who's an astrophysicist at USC, did this wonderful talk about how black holes appear to be these huge gravitational destructive forces in the universe. But his argument is the universe also began with a black hole. So black holes could also be creation and not destruction. Our science fiction has turned it into these like enormous gravity sucking vacuum cleaners. But, you know, stars might emerge from black holes, you know. So I like this idea of defining blackness as this place for growth, this just gestation for change, this almost, you know, what did Stephen Hawking call the bridge between black holes? The
like a wormhole.
Yeah, what is the wormhole? He had
Yeah.
what is the other name for wormhole? He had Stephen Hawking had some sort of clandestine, fantastic astrophysics name for it. I can't remember it. It'll come to me in 2 seconds. As soon as we're done playing the game, it'll come right back to me. But yeah, I like that idea as defining blackness. So if we define blackness that way, Eli, what do you think? Where should our universe live? There's a bit of a caveat here too with blackness that way as well, right? Because we don't want to be in a constant gestation period, right? So 5 as blackness might not be where we want to be because we'll never emerge. We'll be the primordial ooze for infinity.
Right, which is exciting and also sort of terrifying.
Yeah. So where do you think our world should be?
I mean, well, we may as well crank it up. And then if we want to create more of a utopia, obviously easier to make a utopia with equality. I don't know if you can make a utopia without equality.
Mm-hmm.
Could you imagine one?
A utopia without equality?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good question. We have to know what equality means, you know, and we have to also be able to define resources, and we have to have an overall idea, an overall philosophy of equality, right? Because if equality is everybody gets to do everything, I don't know if that's sustainable. That's going to be something that'd be interesting when we start making our artifacts, right? So where are you thinking? Where are you thinking? You're for me, you're feeling like a 5 at equality, but maybe like a 3-4 at blackness. What are you thinking?
Oh, I was thinking of taking it the other direction and going like still like 5 blackness and like 2 equality just to see what happens.
Interesting. So Eli's a 5-2. I like that.
I'm with that.
Lacey's a 5-2. Chinello, what do you think?
I was gonna go 4 equality and 1 black. And we should just see how that.
1. Oh, okay. In general consensus. Okay, we're gonna have to go to the vote. We're gonna have to go to the vote again. Okay.
Wait, Chinello, wait. Just a second. Thinking about your space, you're saying it's like there's no blackness, but there is a lot of equality.
Yes.
Ooh, 5-2.
Just something to think about.
5-2.
Yeah, it could be really homogenous.
Yeah, and Eli's and Chinello's a 4-1 on blackness. Okay, we're voting again. And you can't choose yours.
Okay.
Can't choose.
Oh, you can't choose yours. Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yours.
Wait.
So,
okay. What was?
Can't choose yours. Who's a 5-5 for our world? Who's a 5-5?
Wait, Chinello, what was yours?
Chinello was 4-1. 4 equality, 1 blackness.
Okay, let's try that.
5-5. I'll go 5-5.
Okay, Chinello goes 5-5. That's 1 for 5-5. Who goes? Lacey and Eli both say 5-2. 5 blackness, 2 equality. What are we thinking? That's who's 5-2? Who's 5-2? I mean, you guys, you're the only ones who had 2 people. So
yeah. I might switch over to 5-2 then.
Okay, we're going 5-2 for the sake of the game.
Yeah.
For the sake of this gameplay, we're gonna go 5-2. So let's put our world at 5 blackness, 2 equality.
Yeah. I got so engaged in the game that I forgot that I have to do things here. Yeah. Okay, there's us, yeah?
Okay.
Cool.
Okay, so do we want to spend any time talking about our world before we jump into, maybe let's just jump into Artifact? What do you say, our illustrious storyteller?
Yeah, let's jump into making some artifacts so we can give people kind of an experience on that. But our world, just so we can remind ourselves, and the name that I was thinking of was the Einstein-Rosen bridge. I can't. For some reason, it was like Higgs boson. No, that's not it. That's the God particle. But yeah, the Einstein-Rosen bridge. Okay, so our world has an extreme amount of blackness, right? So we are almost always changing. We are almost always growing. We are almost always in a phase where we are evolving, right? And we celebrate evolution in our gestation periods, right? But we have very little equality. So maybe it's a world where only certain people get to evolve. And maybe the evolvers evolve and the folks who don't evolve just have to deal with it. What do you think? That's interesting, huh? That's interesting. Okay, so we are going to build some objects. We're going to build some artifacts. And at the end of the game, we're going to vote on the artifact that represents our world the best. And we'll call that an obelisk. And then that obelisk goes out into the universe and searches for other obelisks when you can play other games. But for now, we are going to focus on artifacts. The top line are our inspirations. This is going to inspire us to make artifacts. The bottom line are the objects in which the artifacts will take shape, will take form, right? And all of these artifacts, from the inspirations to the objects, will be influenced to populate a world that has an incredible amount of blackness and very little equality. Okay, so I'm not going to call on anyone. Let's look at our inspiration cards. We have a battle against global warming, new technologies to increase CO2 absorption, debate over global responsibility. We have astro blackness. That is the what does that say? I don't have my glasses on. Inspiration. Oh, okay. Astro blackness. We all know what astro blackness is. If you're familiar with Sun Ra and the Sun Ra Orchestra and the rise of astro blackness, that will be self-explanatory. Is black folks in space. And then the final inspiration card are new model armies, private armed forces, semi-autonomous robots, super empowered individuals, right? And our objects are sex education, fashion, one of my personal favorites, and a car. So who can build an artifact using battle against global warming, astro blackness, new model armies, sex education, fashion, and car? Who's got one? Who's got one? Who's got one? Incredible amount of blackness. Least
I have one that's still kind of forming. I think my own definition, I didn't understand the definition of astral blackness before, but my mind went towards astral projecting and just corporeal forms all the way together like that. When I think of a world of the most possible blackness and a little less equality, I was thinking of, in regards to the object being fashion, my first thought went to something that's in this world, but like the color Vanta Black that was created by Anish Kapoor, which is the darkest or the blackest black that's ever been created. And so when that's used for fashion, when it's used for clothes, you lose all form. There's no distinguishing what's happening. Yeah. So I was thinking of this being a form of class distinction in this future where those that are perhaps under the lower echelon are forced to wear these type of clothing and are forced to lose their corporeal form. And that is, in a sense, like a way of distinguishing people from like Lacey was mentioning before, that are forming gestation, kind of looking into nothingness, and lacking that form, but that could be coming into what you need to be. I'm still kind of forming this in my head as I'm speaking, so please don't.
No, that's interesting. So you're saying those who don't have the ability to gestate, to transform. They have to wear this type of clothing to represent the fact that they are formed, right? And they're not on the same equal status as the formless.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. Okay, so how would that work in the society as far as moving up to the classes? Would you get less formless as you move towards the ability to evolve, or more form?
I would say more form, because that produces, depending on how you see it, that can be seen as both a positive of being able to form self-expression, form who you are, and be able to express that own physical body of what you are, or that can be a negative where it's like sticking within that gestation, sticking within that constantly forming. It allows for more. I'm not sure.
Maybe it's something where the community sees you're in a form for too long, and that's when, you know, the evolving has to come to you and say to you, you have not changed form in
this many years, or
this many years. It's time to move in. It's time to evolve. That might be interesting for our world, right? Our world is constantly moving towards this evolution, moving towards this evolving idea, moving towards this blackness, moving towards this darkness. And the equality might not be imposed by society, but it just might be imposed through existence, right? You're born formed, right? And then as you grow through your experience, you get to move through until formlessness, right? But in order to do that, you have to assume these separate stages of this form, right? That might be interesting. And then once you have reached your final form, like Dragon Ball Z, but like with blackness, right? Once you reach the final form, you know, you get to go Super Saiyan God and join the evolution, the evolutionary ooze, right?
You're God.
Exactly. Or, you know, it's also, it kind of made me think of like Star Trek Deep Space Nine, right? Where the founders and were this like ooze, this primordial ooze in space. And Odo, even though he could shape change, right? And he was amongst the humans and he was one of the founders, he didn't actually feel like one of them, right? He felt like he was on the outside because he lived with humans so long. He appreciated who they were, and then eventually he had to join the primordial ooze to save them. So that might be I like that idea. Lonny, you had one.
Oh yeah. So I was thinking of a digital wearable jacket that projects holograms of famous events in Black history, and it is the most jacket in demand. The most wearable jacket in demand. So, you know, you have that jacket, you're the shit, you're great, you know, you're cool. You know, if you don't have it, you gotta, you know,
you gotta go get you a jacket.
Yeah.
You got to go evolve into a jacket that has the Black history on it. Yeah. I love that. I love that idea. What is the jacket made of? Like, what's the material?
Oh, it's like nano fiber material or something that, like, you know, it has all these secret, it can make you warm, and you can program it to make you feel good. It hugs you if you want to, and then spews out Black history holograms at the same time. So whatever mood you in, it can reflect your mood too. So, you know, I want to see Martin Luther King today, or I want to see Kamala, or I want to see, you know, Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass.
I love that. You know? I love that. What was it? What was the inspiration that brought you to that idea? That's fantastic.
Well, I think the inspiration for me was Astro Blackness, the rise of Astro Blackness, because, you know, you're rising above the colonial mentality to reaffirm your existence and your worth, you know.
What if the jacket could transform based on the Black history, based on the mood of Black history as well, right? So say you're feeling Beyonce, right? And then all of a sudden your jacket transforms into, you know, a design that's on the Astro Black cloud plane that Beyonce designed, or say you're feeling like Malcolm X, and then your jacket transforms into something that's by any means necessary, some, an article of clothing that really tells people to like either do what you say or get out of your way, you know what I'm saying? Or, like, what if it could like form almost as if it shapes and transforms as you're feeling the Black history mood?
Do I sign up for that? Because I want to buy that right now.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm going to move through some artifacts just because we don't have a lot of time left. So Eli, do you have an artifact?
I was thinking about battle against global warming and also fashion. And I was thinking about, so the Blackness, the changeability, and the low equality. I was imagining everyone, I was trying to imagine a world that was sort of a utopia, even without the equality.
Oh, nice.
So I imagined that everyone is living in these like vastly different terrains with vastly different kinds of fashion. They have access to different resources around them.
Mm-hmm.
But it's everything that they need, and their fashion goes to adapt to that. So if they're in the desert, they've got like hoods to keep themselves like cool and hot, and if they're out in the Arctic tundra, then they're staying warm. And they have to like constantly be rebalancing themselves across the world to keep up with just like sort of the changing balance of need. And so everybody has very different resources. So that's why there's low equality, but they all have still what they need.
I think that's wonderful. And if we're talking about creatures that are moving towards evolution in this, evolved state, it might be interesting for those who aren't evolved to take this information that you're accumulating from the jacket and just constantly feeding the information to the people in the evolved state, because they can't perceive what's going on in the world, but maybe they can help it. Maybe they can aid it. Maybe they could, lower the temperature of the world when the world is getting too hot. Maybe they can provide, maybe they have power over the weather, right? If the desert is getting too dry, they can make it rain. You know what I'm saying? But through this information that they're getting, the terrestrial information, they can use that in their network, the primordial ooze network, in order to move the planet into a more equitable state.
Man, right? One day it's raining and you're like, oh, look, it's mom.
Yeah, exactly. I wonder if that would deify these people. Like, how do we stay away from it turning into a religion? Just something to think about. I'm just putting that out there. Putting that out there in the world. Lacey, do you have an artifact for us?
Do we have time for one more?
We have time for one more and then we can vote.
Okay. I'm thinking about battle against global warming and sex education.
Cool.
And
two of my favorite topics.
So that it's kind of related to Chinello's artifact too a bit, and to what you just said, Ahmed. But the there's a self-regulating systems across species that can make the conditions conducive to procreation or not.
I think that's great. I think that's wonderful.
And so if you're tapped in to what's going on around you, like, that is an education.
Absolutely. So the world could tell you when it's business time.
Yeah, which, like, if it's, it's not for everyone at the same time,
right.
Obviously, because that's not sustainable, right? So
exactly.
It's
sometimes
not.
it's time to watch your jacket transform, and then sometimes it's business time, and the globe could tell you it's business time. That's wonderful. I love that. Fantastic idea. Okay, let's vote on our artifact and create an obelisk. Okay, so Chinello's Astro Blackness and fashion. Who's for Chinello's formless formness? That's 3. Oh, I love that one. Lonny, he had his Black history transformational jacket. Who's for that one?
That one's really awesome too.
Yeah, pretty good. Okay, Chinello's for that one. That's one. For Eli's environmental clothing source, temperature for thermometers, right? Okay. And Lacey's, it's business time. You know what Lonnie's head is at. Lonnie's head is at his business. So our obelisk for our game is Chanelo's article of clothing that has formlessness. And that's what we have. That's how we win the game of Afro-Rithms from the Future with 1 minute to spare. So Joshua at the Game Academy, thank you very, 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 very much for allowing us to play Afro-Rithms from the Future for you guys. If you guys have any questions, any comments, if you guys want to ideate, go to afrorhythms.org, go to the Fathomers.org. You can go to the AfroFuturistPodcast.com, or you can visit me on Twitter at Ahmed Best, Instagram at Best Ahmed. We're all connected, just like just like our game, just like our formlessness, just like our world. I hope you enjoy playing with us. We enjoy playing with you. I like to end with this James Baldwin quote. James Baldwin said, "If I'm in despair, you are in danger." And the reason why I love that quote is, and especially in reference to this game, if we can figure out how to use all of our ideas, all of our ideation, all our creativity, and we create a world where there is no despair, we also create a world where there is no danger, and we all can thrive. And that's a world that I want to live in, right? And we can use Afro-Rithms from the Future to do that. So thank you once again, Joshua. Thank you for everyone at the Game Academy. Thanks for playing with us. Thanks for letting us have this time, and have a great night.
Good night.